How's it going, everybody? This is International Master Daniel Wrench. This is Chess.com's YouTube channel. And this is another member analysis mini. You guys know the drill. You know what this series is all about. You see we have a Scotch game in front of us. I blitzed through the first couple moves. Obviously, the Scotch is one of White's main weapons behind the Ruy Lopez or Spanish game. There are videos on both the Scotch and the Spanish game in our Chess Openings playlist. You can check those out if you have the time, or even if you don't have the time and you just want to waste time, go ahead and do it. The thing about the Scotch is that it's an early aggressive challenge in the center, a much more direct way to fight and try to open lines than some of the variations in like a Spanish or even a slow Italian. And because of it, I think it can cause people to stray a little bit from basic opening principles. And the theme in this game is very similar to one that I covered in the last member analysis mini, when players play these dysfunctional moves that end up crippling and retarding their own development, sort of, cutting off their hand despite themselves, right? Or fighting the hand that feeds them, one or the other. I'm sure one of those makes sense. Even, I think, decently experienced players who know that the basic rules to the opening are develop, meaning get all your minor pieces into the game, attack and control the center, and get castled before move 10. Those three principles already are things that, if you don't know them, will make you just a much better chess player right away. Don't waste time. Get all your minor pieces out, get castled before move 10, and try to only make moves that increase your control or at least pressure on the center. And I believe that the player playing black here understands that, but whenever they face an aggressive try like the Scotch, it causes them to stray a little bit from their principles. And so here black played this move, queen e7. You guys already know what I'm going to say about this. The story here, same story, Morning Glory. The old lady that swallowed the fly blocks the bishop, which prevents castles, which creates problems for the king, and especially if you end up in an opening where the center becomes open quickly, black should feel the pain if he's neglecting these kind of principles. And white, I believe, tries to do it, but unfortunately the mistakes now played by white end up sort of returning the favor. One of the main reasons I'm reviewing this game is that I believe we've covered a lot of basic development principles and in a lot of, whether it be member games or just regular opening lectures, in terms of what the principles are. So this opening, I believe if anybody spends some time learning the basic principles of the opening, they shouldn't have trouble with the concepts here. But maybe a lot of people who haven't ever been exposed to any sort of organized chess or had one chess lesson in their life don't know that these kinds of moves in the opening are just sins. To block your development in this way is an opening sin. And what would you do if your opponent plays this kind of opening sin? That's why I'm reviewing it, is what's the critical thinking process? Our opponent plays a move that we know is silly Billy, and we don't even know, we have a little voice in our shoulder saying, obviously this is wrong based on X principle, I know, but what exactly am I supposed to do? Well, I have a little critical thinking skills tip. And that is, as soon as your opponent plays a move in the opening that you don't know, whether that's move 3, as it is in this case, or move 33, if you're a grandmaster, by definition, if something is played you don't know, that means, sort of reading between the lines, there was something you were expecting, right? And so if your opponent plays a move that blocks their development, and the move you were expecting was for, let's say, them to take the pawn, like the best move, the quickest way to find out what you should do is, well, what's the literal difference between the move they played and the move I was expecting? Well, the move that I was expecting opens the center and enables them to fight for the dark squares. This is kind of the main way black should play. This move blocks their development and is potentially going to keep the king in the center quickly. So what I should do is try to develop quickly and open the center, since the weakness they created will probably have to do with the king. In this case, it's kind of obvious that the queen move is really bad, but there are sometimes when your opponent plays a move that's different than what you were expecting, and it's not so obvious. So before you just decide if the move is good or bad, try to weigh sort of, okay, what was the move I was expecting? What did that do? And what is the move that they just played do? What are the literal differences? And that might sort of put you on the right thinking process to just sort of acknowledging or it's like taking stock of the position, recognizing exactly what's good and bad about your opponent's move. That's just kind of a general tip. But knight c3 is, of course, a fantastic move. And after knight f6, knight c3, of course, is developed and threatens moves like this. White first starts to stray. Now, the move white plays, this move is much more of a sin. White should still be in good shape, as you'll see. But the most natural thing to do when your opponent plays a move that creates serious dysfunction and retards their own development is for you to develop as quickly as possible, anticipating that the position is going to become open, and that if you're more developed, you have a better chance of getting their king than they do yours. Imagine white developing quickly and getting castled, and black is not able to do the same, right? What's going to happen? The center is going to be open, and game over, Red Rover. That's what's going to happen. The black king is going to have problems. So what I would play here if I was white is just a move like bishop g5. which, by the way, threatens a move like knight to d5 because the knight is now pinned. Other moves are still good. At this point, white's position is so good, even d5 is probably great. Developing is probably okay too. But I would say that this move, if you take, I can still go here in some positions. Not right away because you have this move queen takes e4 check, which is a bit of a problem, and all of a sudden the tables are turned. But instead of knight d5, after even a simple move like knight takes d4, white is still doing well. You can't take this pawn, and I'm still way ahead in development, and you're still feeling the consequences of your big mistake. So here white played this move knight to b5, which is fun, and it attacks c7, but you're sort of returning the favor. Your opponent plays a move that cripples their development, and now you break a principle, which is never move a minor piece twice until all your pieces have been developed. A basic rule for the opening is you don't want to move any minor twice, pretty much unless you're winning material, until all four of your minor pieces, meaning your knights and bishops, are in the game, and your king is castled. So this move breaks that rule, and probably what black should do is back up the queen to d8 to guard the pawn. And now, again, if white continues to be greedy, I'll take here, and it's pretty much become a big mess with neither side really having a clear lead in development. Instead, black returns the favor of knight b5 with another overly aggressive move, queen to b4 check. White, unfortunately, here doesn't see the best way to take advantage of it. He plays the move c3, which is okay, but developing and blocking the check would have left black in an impossible situation to defend this pawn, and therefore the rook and everything that follows, the house, as they say. Both sides showed kind of a clear lack of planning in this game, meaning it seemed like a lot of one-move chess, right? It's like even the move to begin with, queen e7, is very much a one-move thinking process. Well, my pawn's attacked. This looks fantastic. I'll defend the pawn, and if he takes it, I'll have the queen on the line, with no real thought process in terms of what it does to the potential of your position. White returns the favor with a move like knight b5 that, if black had played a simple way to defend the pawn, white would have regretted this waste of time in breaking of an opening principle. But after queen b4 check, now again, white just doesn't consider the fact that probably gets so excited about the double attack here, doesn't consider that black has a simple move that guards it, whereas bishop d2 would make a double attack that black could then no longer deal with. So you have to think ahead more than one move at a time if you want to get ahead. You got to think ahead to get ahead. And chess is a game that teaches you that. It teaches you that harshly on some occasions, right? It's very black and white. If you don't make an effort to think ahead, then somebody who did will just always be one step ahead. I can't get away from this word ahead. It just keeps coming out of my mouth ahead of time. Wow, that was ridiculous. Okay, so now white plays d5. This is fine. And I want to say that white was... Well, d5 maybe wasn't even as good as taking a pawn, or I wonder if you could even potentially still just go after the queen. Even with this sort of interesting line here where black gets some pawns for the piece. A piece is a piece, and that might have been still the most direct way, but I'm tired of criticizing obvious mistakes. So I moved ahead a few moves, and what ends up happening was white ends up seeing a chance to attack the queen before moving the knight on b5, but after knight takes pawn, white realizes that if he takes the pawn here, in the end we'll have a big old trade, and black will win his piece back, and it'll be black who ends up being up material. So that would have been no fun, and so already white ends up on the defensive, plays this awkward move, knight back to a3 instead. Black unnecessarily sacrifices a piece and does end up losing it finally, but ends up getting a million pawns for the piece in the process. And in the end, I believe that we have a total mess, and black probably has enough pawns / compensation for the piece that he lost. But in the bigger picture of things, the mistakes that players at this level could learn from were all made in the beginning stage. Being accurate if you're attacking and trying to push your pawns when your opponent has an extra piece is good for black, so black played well here and eventually went on to win. Advancing the pawns really aggressively, which is what you have to do if you have pawns playing against a piece. But I'm not going to highlight all the lessons here because this isn't designed to be a 20-minute lecture or cover all the tactics that happen in the middle game. But rather, I wanted to highlight the mistakes that were made in the first stage, as I think those were the most critical, especially for players at this level. You see the game ends here with white resigning because of the discovery on the rook on b1, as well as the bishop hanging. White's going down just too much material, losing a piece, and already down some pawns. After a move like rook c1 would have been down a piece. So white decides to throw in the towel. But the biggest lessons, again, are from the opening, and I hope that you can take notes of that, and again, stop committing this sin, this cardinal sin of opening development when you put your queen in front of your bishop, on whether that's on f1 or on f8. Stop committing this sin, and you will get much better middle games and much better tactics, therefore, after that. So get yourself on the right track. Don't block your queen. I sound like somebody saying, stay away from drugs, kids, which is also a fantastic idea if you're a kid out there and you're watching. But that's the lesson for today's video, and I'm going to see you around on the main site.